Hello, everybody. I do not know how many folks we have watching us yet, but so we're going to wait a little bit before formally starting. Hope all of you are doing very well. It's been so long since I've done one of these shows. And so long. 7 people. Wow, already. That is amazing.
Wow.
That is amazing. Wow. That's maybe you should do this more often. That's actually pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. Thank you all of you for being here. I really appreciate it. So basically, I am restarting this show. I have not done this show in 3 years, I think. And this was a show that I did with someone called LeCrone, who obviously is not here, is no longer here, where we both tackled various cultural, political, and social issues from our very unique lenses. Paul came towards these issues with a perspective grounded in psychology and a sort of love for archetypes and that kind of thinking, very Peterson-esque. I came to the issues of the day with a love of philosophy, grounded in, more importantly, the nature of things, human nature, what the principle of human nature can instruct and guide us to do in order to live not just better lives, but rightful lives, lives that are connected under the proper principles. And the reason we called it moral panic, actually, before I get to our guest today, our permanent co-host today, Nikoji, is because when the show was launched, we had a very particular target in mind. Around the time the show was launched, I believe it was 2021 or 2022, most likely 2021, if I can remember correctly. Critical race theory was actually a rather hot debate. In fact, I met Paul LeCrone through my debate on Gothic's channel, which is, again, old, where I debated 2 academics, I think Sam something and Aaron Rabinowitz, who were both 2 left-wing academics who were defending critical race theory and who argued critical race theory was an example of a moral panic. And I began seeing this phrase used to shut down conversations and also used to cause people to shy away from taking on rather intense but also rather important issues, moral issues that were happening in the country. And so I figured, why don't we have a show where we don't reclaim the phrases a lot of people say they like to do when it comes to words that perhaps shouldn't be said in a polite company, like the N-word or whatever, but instead we use the phrase as a gateway for discovery rather than using it as a bludgeon to shut down further inquiry. And so here we are now, and I think that this is a show that many people who may follow me now may not actually know about, because I have over 830 plus videos on this channel, and each of those videos have different eras, and not all of those eras are going to be known to people unless you decide to do a equivalent of an archaeological deep dive and go back into the history of this channel. But I actually do intend to do this regularly. Me and my co-host here, Nikoji, we both intend to do this very regularly. When we have a set schedule, I will certainly let all of you know. But I also believe it's very important for not just me to talk to you in pre-recorded videos, but also for me to talk with all of you as we continue to go through our current cultural moment and continue to experience our current cultural moment in the way we do right now. This is a cultural moment, I think, that lacks a great deal of depth, lacks a great deal of focus, lacks a great deal of understanding, and also, most importantly, lacks the sort of thirst for inquiry that makes not only every single domain of knowledge possible, but allows the human experience to continue to become refined towards a proper status. Without inquiry, you don't have the information you need for reflection. Without reflection, you can't work on your character, you can't work on yourself, you can't even understand an issue. And without working on your character or yourself, you cannot fully reach the heights of the potential that you must reach in order to live, not just to fulfill life, but in a rightful life. So I hope during these shows that we are able to give something to you that is of value. Even if, you may agree with us or disagree with us, I hope that you're able to interact with what we have to say with an open heart, open mind, and I hope that you're able, most importantly, to put aside any biases you may have and to simply entertain the conversation as it is. So, without further ado, allow me to introduce our permanent co-host here, Nikoji. Actually, I'm going to let them introduce themselves. This
Sure,
is somebody. Actually, let me say a few words before that happens.
no
This is
problem.
somebody who is himself beginning his content creation journey. This is someone who I think has a wide variety of valuable things to say, and this is someone I believe all of you will enjoy hearing from. So, without further ado, um, I'll let him introduce himself.
Why, thank you, and thank you, viewers, to the resurgence, if you will, of the Moral Panic Show. It's very timely because we're seeing a lot of the same topics from 4 years ago, 8 years ago, resurfacing, and our project here is to dive deep into these topics with a philosophical bent, and I welcome you on this journey.
Excellent, short, sweet, and to the point. So, um, speaking of that, I actually do want to go over briefly, uh, kind of like the history of this show as it relates to the cultural discourse of the past few years. I think this is going to be very important for us to understand that because I think it's actually going to be very important for us to kind of contextualize our role here. As I mentioned in my intro, when the show first started, the emphasis was on using the term moral panic to create dialogue as opposed to stopping dialogue. Although these days, while that's still very important, I do feel that um, there is more dialogue that is happening now about a lot of different issues in the culture, but the quality of that dialogue is not always up to snuff.
Hmm.
And that's concerning to me. That's concerning to me on several levels. It's concerning to me because a lot of people confuse uh, mere communication and mere talking with saying something meaningful. Right? It's
Hmm.
possible to talk a lot and say nothing. Right? As we call it blowing hot air. We seem to have a lot of that in many different parts of the discourse today. And we can, of course, if you want to, we can go down specifics and point things
Yep.
out. But a lot of people believe that since we're having these sort of what is it, the forbidden conversations that we weren't allowed to have, apparently weren't allowed to have a few years ago, we have somehow reached a point where our society is getting towards more enlightenment. I find the opposite to be true.
Hmm.
I find the more conversations we have that are of lower quality, the dumber we are collectively becoming, the less enlightened we are becoming, and the more difficult it is to actually reach correct conclusions.
Hmm.
So, I don't know. I think when it comes to moral panic, the contribution that we have is to perhaps help people make sense of what they're hearing, not simply add to what they're hearing. But those
Right.
are my thoughts. What do you think, Nico J? What are some of
I
your
I
thoughts?
think it's, if I were to think of a statistic, it's hard for me to not 100% agree with everything that came out of your mouth. I'm trying to think of how else I could elaborate it into different terms to convey the same point since we're in agreement. Frankly, it's the dumbing down of a lot of academic thought and intellectual thought, and we're seeing an unfortunate exploitation of that. So I think this project from day one has never been proven incorrectly. That, you know, classic liberalism, whatever you want to call it, the what the framers had in mind, it's always going to ring true in the modern intellectual arena because it was grounded in, to, like you would say, first principles. It was grounded in rigorous thought, and we're seeing a lot of lack of rigorous thought these days. So
Yeah,
that's our unfortunate but current situation, but there is some hope, and
I
that's
agree.
what this project's all about.
I agree. I agree totally. Um, to add to your point, I think we're also seeing a lot of people. You mentioned both the founding and you also mentioned classical liberalism.
Hmm.
We're seeing a lot of people in the modern discourse actually oppose both of those things in some way, shape, or form, not simply in the way that we've heard before, right? Because it's actually a motif in American political engagement
Right.
to say person X or party X is writing the Constitution. And sometimes there's varying degrees of truth to that and varying degrees of uh, hyperbole to that. But what is absolutely true is that there is a strong anti-American, anti-enlightenment in the proper
Hmm.
sense, in the foundational sense that it
Yep.
directly involves what our ideas are as a people. There is a strong strain of that moving through the culture at the moment. And, I'm not
And
going into your personalities. I don't want to do that.
yeah,
Although we can if we want to. I don't mind. But
I want to take it to the next level too. After
oh
I'll,
yeah, please.
and I think to continue the point that you made, I think that it's being exploited by foreign. The entire time there were complaints about foreign interference, and when you think of who benefits from anti-Americanism, it's completely foreign enemies. So we're seeing the dumbing down of American civics and the exploitation from, you know, likely numerous foreign entities, unfortunately.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, folks, a lot of folks don't realize just how sophisticated the network of enemies America has across the world is.
Mm.
A lot of folks tend to believe the notion that these enemies are trying to beat us militarily. I think that might have been true 30 to 40 years ago. But once the Cold War ended, and there was this illusion brought forth by people like Fukuyama that history was at its end and society was now in a different stage. But what was actually true about that, even though I think his prediction was largely wrongheaded, was actually true about that the way the way world powers engage with each other drastically changed, and it changed in a way that made their efforts to subvert the other very different as well. And I think that more than anything else is, I think, one of the key lessons of the modern age. These days, you don't have to spend money to go fund a bunch of ragtag gangs in Nicaragua or Afghanistan to
Yep.
fight against your enemies indirectly. You don't have to do that.
Yep.
In the 80s, you had to do that, and now you don't. Well, in the 80s, they did that. I'm not sure they had to, but in the 80s, they did that.
Yep.
These days, you can simply write a check to a person or two who happens to be influential online, and that person begins spouting propaganda that
Yep.
has maybe elements of truth, but is obviously on the whole false. But it's truthful enough to be plausible, but not truthful enough to be substantively correct. And
Hmm.
all of a sudden, you have now succeeded at undermining the sort of fabric of that country. That's just one single example. There are thousands of other ways you can also kind of achieve the same thing without firing a single gun, without handing out a single
Hmm.
weapon, troll farms, bots, so on and so forth. However, here's something that's actually a little bit more interesting.
Hmm.
You can also undermine and subvert a country by more generally encouraging that country not to invest in rigor or
Hmm.
substance, not to invest in their own moral education. So you don't have to subvert a country by funding troll farms or bots or whatever. You can subvert a country by simply encouraging them to fight, encouraging them to have bursts of passion and reject their reason. And I think that in all reality, America, we have done a great job of doing that to ourselves.
Yep.
And our enemies are simply benefiting and cherishing it. They're simply adding on to the pile that we've created for ourselves.
And I think that's what's so ironic. If we were to use that like 5 years, look back 5 years, all that talk about like white fragility and things like that, they've subverted themselves into this camp of that you were just illustrating, the of self defeatism, and it's so ironic that none of them can realize it because they aren't looking at it from a self-aware point of view. That they just, yeah, thank you, Anthony. Yeah, they aren't looking at it from a self-aware point of view, and as you illustrated, it's self-destruction. Oh, we got a physics guy in the chat.
Yeah. Hey, well, let's say hi to some people that have been around for a while on the channel. Anthony, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. It's nice to see you. Bud, thank you as much for being here as well. I think between these two gentlemen, they've definitely been around for over 2 years. They've been around for a very long time on the channel. And so I must say, I am grateful and thankful for every comment, every view. I know that all of you have crazy and busy lives, and all of you are trying to do something with yourselves. And so the fact that you would take a few moments to watch little old me's content, and to even be here for this live stream, to hear just two thinkers think boldly and courageously in public means the world to me. So thank you so much for being here. And I hope that you gain something from this conversation. And I hope you continue to remain in our community, because we are building, I say it in videos all the time, we're building, I used to say revolution of the mind, and I might start saying that again. But revolution kind of conjures up some guttural pictures in the head. Right. Conjures up like some very forceful, violent pictures. When I say revolution, it can also conjure up stagnation, because a wheel revolves around its axis and it remains in the same spot ultimately. But when I say we are building a cohort, it's unmistakable that there is an end in sight, a process in motion, and that process is going to get us to a place that is meaningful. So in my videos recently, I've alluded to this, the sort of pensive cohort. So the pensive cohort, and I'm just going to kind of humor me a moment, Nikoji, just for this. I think that the source of cultural change in the political and social landscape are going to be people that are around my age. I am 25. I know it does not look like it, although I think the beard is helping me look younger. Hopefully it is. But I am 25. And I have noticed, I've been around for a long time. Okay. Like when I was around, when I started making content in 2019, that is over 6 years ago. Is that right? Yeah, 6 years ago. That's ancient by content creation standards, especially in the sort of political world. So I've seen a lot of people come and go. I've met a lot of people. I've met people that are much bigger names than me. I've seen a lot of people fail. I've seen a lot of very successful people that many of you know do some very disgusting things. Again, I don't do drama or gossip, so I'll let you imagine whatever you want to imagine. I've seen quite a lot. But one key element that unites every single person I've seen at least do marginally well, they spoke to a thirst and a hunger that was within people around my age, within Gen Z, within the younger generations. But they didn't always do so for a benevolent end. Sometimes they did so simply to make them mad and more depressed. And I don't know about you, but I think a generation that is having to deal with historic cost of living crisis, historic inflation, having to deal with the consequences of a digital world where their focus is inherently whittled down to nothing, and they are constantly being hijacked by dopamine receptors that are being manipulated by social media companies for a end that is not their own betterment. I think a generation that is dealing with such a unique cacophony of factors does not need more rage, does not need more nihilism, does not need more anger, does not need more despair in their lives. But it becomes very easy and very even addictive, very tasteful to give them that, because it keeps the watch time up, it keeps the retention up, it keeps the algorithm in check, it keeps all these things up. This is why you see people, again, I don't mention names, but this is why you see a lot of folks like Mr. Tate, many of you know who Mr. Tate is, being so popular. Not because he's saying anything particularly insightful. I mean, the kind of person, the kind of figure you see in Andrew Tate is the kind of figure that was around in the 80s and 90s. Like, he's the kind of figure that used to just go out and flash his Cadillac and, you know, wear the stereotypical pimp coat and just pretend as if he has everything just because you see a lot on him. When in all reality, what is beneath all that sort of posh exterior is a vast void of emptiness that not even he can fill. He can only fill
Hmm.
by going outside of himself, which is actually kind of a crisis in of itself.
Well, you just explained narcissism.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, narcissism, but narcissism that is performed in public too.
Right.
Because it's one thing to be narcissistic, but it's
Right.
a whole other level to be a narcissist
That's true.
in public for public consumption.
Yeah, that's
That's
monetized narcissism.
exactly. That's an entirely different beast. And so, why are there a lot of young people saying this person actually has my best interest in mind? I mean, that's because it's very easy, again, to relate to the despair and the nihilism you're feeling. The best thing any of us can do is not allow ourselves to collapse into our lower feelings. Is to instead allow ourselves to understand our lower feelings, to grapple with them, to hold them close to our heart without letting them overtake our heart. Because when you let these things overtake your heart, they ultimately influence your mind. And a mind that is rooted in despair and nihilism is not a mind that actually can um, can actually make any meaningful contributions to their own life, much less to society. So I think that there's a severe problem with that. Anyway, back to my point about the pensive cohort.
Right.
So if all these people are hijacking Gen Z and directing them towards a particular point that is not healthy for them, I thought to myself, why not try to speak to them in a way that is not condescending, that is not pandering, but in a way that is going to help them find some kind of meaning and understanding in this tumultuous world? That's going to require a lot of different things. It's going to require rejecting the current model of political media. And by the way, I see this even in conservative media. The model seems to be tapping into our desire to see others destroyed, tapping into our desire to see others beat. A sort of a gladiator. I call it the sort of politics of the gladiator, right? That is the content that has been marketed towards Gen Z since Shapiro started in 2016. Like, and it's been very, 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 very unfortunate. I'm not sure you can speak to this, Nikoji, but when I
Apologies, I was thought we were getting trolled, but
oh yeah, there's some
yeah, you were mistaken for
no,
the
no,
football
so
player.
I will briefly address this. Okay, I'll briefly address this. So there is a Wisconsin football player named
Right.
that has my same exact name. Who, when you search my name, he comes up.
Right.
I thought about writing him a letter to say, "Hey, dude, you need to tell your handlers or whoever in the NFL to stop publicizing you so much because you're hurting my algorithm." But
Can you
in all
imagine?
seriousness, yeah, there's another Christian Watson,
Maybe it's
but
helping you. Maybe it's helping you.
maybe he's helping me. Maybe he's helping me. Like, look, there are a lot of
Yeah.
over the years. I've had a lot of creeps try
Yeah.
to get at me. I've had a lot of creeps, a lot of people that are just out of their minds that have tried to try to find things out about me. So I'm actually kind of happy right now. I don't immediately pop up.
Right.
Hopefully that changes in the future because
Well, we might need to rename
honest-
the channel like politics or something, or
yeah,
philosophy, and yeah.
oh dear. But yeah. So unfortunately, that is a thing. Like, I don't know much about him. I hear he's a good player, but yeah. So that's him.
Right.
So
Sorry
yeah.
about that. Didn't mean to accuse the viewer. Anyway,
Yeah. But yeah, as I was mentioning, so the model within conservative media that has been directed towards young minds for like over a decade now has been tap into their guttural fascination, or tap into the general human guttural fascination with destruction and with blood sports. And this is actually the model of the debate bro, right? Subculture that we see so popular online. And if any of you don't know what a debate bro is, I suspect you do. If you're here, you may have some familiarity with internet politics. But if you don't know what a debate bro is, then let me know in the chat and I'll explain. I'm not going to belabor an explanation quite yet. But this is the same thing. The debate bro model is based off of this same urge. So the thing is, this doesn't feed anyone. What does this feed you? What does seeing others get destroyed feed you? A society that is constructive is going to focus on finding inroads and avenues of possibility, not destroying inroads and destroying avenues of possibility by making everything into a zero-sum conflict. Debate pros and the whole X person was destroyed by Y essentially reduces every single thing
Someone said to
towards a
explain it.
zero-sum conflict. And it's just no good. It's just no good.
If
No
a
good at all.
viewer said to explain it, please. Whatever that means.
Oh, to explain the debate bro stuff?
I suppose.
So I'll explain that in a second. But let's actually look at this real quick. I love debates and hate them, but better to have conversation. No, so look, I 100%, I 100% agree that it's important to have debate. But when you have debate ought to be situated toward intellectual inquiry. Debate ought to be focused solely upon finding the truth and refining approaches to the truth. So that is what I believe, and that's why I think the evidence bears out. But debate bros don't do that. They debate to perform, right? They debate to perform. They don't debate to enlighten. They don't debate to find anything beyond the spectacle. And when debate is a spectacle, it goes away from its usefulness. And it becomes what? It becomes just like another form, a glorified form of wrestling. Well, I tend to think that we have enough spectacle and distraction in our society today. You have 10,000 different ways to get lost in nonsense in this society. 10,000 different ways. Why would you make one of the few tools we have to navigate the rocky terrain of knowledge, which is debate? Why would you reduce the effectiveness of that unless you wish to have a society that is perpetually lost in nonsense? I can't ascribe malice upon all the debate bros, but I can say what they are doing, in my opinion, is fundamentally evil because of the effect it is having. I'm speaking a lot, Nikoji. What do you think about all this?
No, I think that's true, and there was some points earlier that I wanted to get back to, if I could even fully recall.
Yeah, take your time.
But I think that part of the project in America is realizing how we've gotten unnecessarily dichotomized into this, like, let's look at basic history. There was a Democratic Republican Party in one name. And when we look to Europe, and when we look to Europe, it's liberal conservatism in one name as well. So we've got obviously we had a civil war, and we ended up with a dichotomy. And part of this project is to understand the philosophy behind that, rather than, if we wanted to do things for ratings, we could just do partisan stuff daily, and we could grow it to 500,000. And the project is not about partisanship; it's about basic civic understanding, philosophy, and more.
Speaking of that, you mentioned, it's funny, in the days of Grover Cleveland, who is one of my favorite presidents, and I've done a video about Grover Cleveland. He's wonderful. There was a faction called the Bourbon Democrats.
Right.
Now, the Democrats today are associated with people with like socialism, progressivism, neoliberalism, just very different assortment of left, center left ideologies. Back in that day, those Democrats were not abhorred socialism.
Right.
They actually supported a robust and free economy.
Exactly.
They actually supported a more restrained view of authority. They were against welfare. They were against a lot. They were against even a lot of taxes. People don't realize that, but Grover Cleveland's second term, the end of his second term, actually saw the introduction of the precursor to the income tax. The income tax didn't actually happen until like the 1900s, but he actually brought forth the precursor not because he wanted to, but because Congress tied his hands and he wanted to reduce the tariff that had been on American had been on and the imports in our country for a very long time. So he made a compromise, although he eventually came to regret that decision. Before that, the only taxes were the tariff and taxes on certain things like whiskey and tobacco. There was no income tax. And the Democrats in the day of Cleveland were against an income tax. Now today you hear Democrats talking about fair share and how the rich need to pay the taxes. So a lot of people do not have enough historical reference point to appreciate the nuances of the development of American political history.
Right.
A wise scholar once told me, said, Christian, American politics moves in cycles. I said, well, what do you mean it moves in cycles? It moves in cycles.
It does.
There are certain kinds of themes you will see pop up in certain periods of time, and those same themes will sometimes reemerge at a later time. So it took me a while to understand that, but that does mean that you're going to see resonances and similarities in certain events in history, right? When people say X president is the worst president of ever of the entire history of the country,
Right.
I ask myself, well, have you guys ever heard of like Millard Fillmore, like the guy who almost sold his country out? Have you ever heard of like Andrew
Taft.
Johnson? Yeah, ever heard of like yeah, there's like several different people. Like I can
Right.
list several people off the top of my head. That I'm thinking, really?
A lot of people hated Hoover.
What's that?
For right or for wrong, a lot of people disliked Hoover as an
Yeah,
example,
absolutely.
and that's why we got
Yeah,
stuck with people hated Hoover so much that we got stuck with FDR, and FDR broke the unwritten rule, right?
yeah.
He
No,
broke
FDR.
he pulled the
Yeah,
Zelensky, and he stayed in
FDR.
power for too long,
FDR is one of the most
and
dangerous men in American history, in my opinion.
and and that's what happened. That if we were to analyze it, because this is a good topic, uh, that's what happened to the Democratic Party. That they became Bourbonism, if you want to call it, died, which is ironic.
Yes.
And
Yeah, no, that's actually a very
yeah,
interesting point. Yeah.
it died. And the LBJ FDR style of Truman style, bomb a country and regulate the state, that became the new face of the Democrats.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, Mr. Whittlefish, thank you so much for
Thank you.
the
Oh,
contribution.
he's a legend. He's an old
Yeah,
timer
thank
of
you.
the channel.
Wilson was the worst, changed my mind. No,
I agree.
let me think. Hold on. Do I agree with that? Wilson's in my top three.
Generally speaking, I agree. Generally speaking.
Let me think. Hold on. Do I agree with that?
I mean,
Yeah.
1913, the Fed,
Yeah.
the income tax.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. I do.
And there was
I
a
agree.
reason at that time we had American firstism at that time, and that's why the precursor to the UN, the League of Nations, couldn't
Yes.
get past the Republican House and Senate, if I recall correctly.
Yes.
So
Yes.
Wilson was
No.
a fundamentally weak president that preferred to be he preferred to do the American policeman role, but he was a fundamentally politically weak president who created the Fed, uh, at least signed some of the legislation. Might have to double check. And a lot of this is more than 100 years ago, but a lot of our issues stem from that era.
Yeah. No. When I think about the cultural milieu of like the early 20th century, I'm in awe. So there was this book I began reading a long time ago about. So okay, let me kind of dial it back here. Wilsonite progressivism in the history of political leftism actually is an interesting contrast to Marxism and more virulent forms of communism. because Wilsonite progressivism, the kind of progressivism shared by Wilson, and by the way, I must mention that Wilsonite progressivism in his day was seen as not very radical, actually very moderate. In fact, many progressives judge Wilson not to have been as radical as he ran on being. He ran on being a radical, but he wasn't as radical. But Teddy Roosevelt was far more radical than him. Teddy Roosevelt, there was this whole debate between Teddy Roosevelt's version of nationalism, the new nationalism, and Teddy Roosevelt wanted to go all the way with the entire sort of social agenda. Wilson wanted to have a social agenda that met progressive aims while still maintaining vestiges of capitalism. And within the progressive era, there was this sort of tug and pull, right? And those who actually have a pure understanding of capitalism will recognize that neither Wilson or Roosevelt's version of progressivism was friendly to capitalism. But Wilson was much more friendly towards big business, because big business, rather than being an enemy of the progressive project, was actually seen as a model to follow to manage the government, because businesses ran by efficiency, and efficiency was achieved by applying so-called scientific principles to the management of an organization. Wilson and those people said, okay, let's apply the same idea to government. Let's have a government based solely on not efficiency in terms of meeting a bottom line or downstreaming. Let's have a government based on efficiency enough to meet the ends of the sort of social justice agenda we want to maintain, to meet the sort of ends of social consciousness was the term there. And so what you got there was an expansive state, right? An expansive state that hijacked the economy with the Federal Reserve, one of the worst decisions made in the past 120 plus years now. You got an expansive state that constructed a system that literally eroded community interaction and made the government the role of provider as opposed to the role of protector, which it was supposed to be by virtue of first principles. A expansive state decided that the only way to really realize the progressive moral agenda was to have it expand beyond borders. There's a reason you hear a lot of communist socialists today say borders, internationalism is the sort of vessel for our ideas to go forward, because they believe like the sort of spirit of humanity is being spoken to when it comes to these ideas. I mean, there's a lot of different things that came from that era of American society, but some of the biggest forms of resistance towards Wilson
Can
were
you
actually
highlight
from America.
that Wilson comment by Anthony?
What's that?
Can you also just in the meantime highlight the comment by Anthony?
Oh yeah.
I'll let you finish though.
Yeah, I think Blackswan was talking about Truman. Truman is an interesting case. I think Truman's legacy, most importantly, is checkered. Truman was a good speaker. He was a good rhetorician. He was able to really speak to a certain idea of America. But in terms of how he governed, I think he set the world in America up for some very dark times, unfortunately. And we have a lot of presidents like that, by the way, like Lincoln, for example, which I'm not sure is a conversation that many people want to have. But Lincoln was one of the most profound rhetoricians in American history. I think Frederick Douglass is probably a little bit more eloquent in terms of, and more effective in some ways, but Lincoln is certainly in the top three. And yet Lincoln governed in a way that I think a lot of Americans, if they understand his governance independent of the aura affixed upon him as a historical figure, they may not view it in the same light. That's not to say Lincoln did everything bad. It's to say that we have to have an objective view of historical figures, right? Lincoln seized newspapers that did not agree with his war agenda, that he believed were going against his war agenda. Lincoln suspended habeas corpus. Lincoln arrested dissidents. Lincoln did a lot of things that I think a lot of people don't really realize. And yet, because he had that line in the Gettysburg Address that we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equally and endowed by the creator with certain inalienable rights, and that among these life, all that stuff, all that those recitations, right? People say this is such an inspiring all-American figure. and yet they're looking more at his aura, his sort of halo, than they are his actual accomplishments. So I'll leave that one there.
Can I
Uh,
do a quick history dump?
yes, absolutely. Please,
Because
please do.
Anthony asked about World War One, and long story short, that we had, you know, what was the wise words that Washington told us about entangling alliances, right? If I recall correctly.
Right, and his farewell address. Yeah, I
And
don't recall exactly what he said, but I recall the general neighborhood of what he said.
what
Um,
happened was in
yeah,
World War One, we had a result of those entangling alliances, and so Wilson felt. Long story short, you know, we might have to make a video, do our research to fully explain, since it's a difficult question. But you know, that was the era when America was trying to be the benevolent power to some degree after manifesting his destiny, and that's a big topic. You know, these are we're summarizing 300 years of history, 250,
absolutely.
and it's a very complicated history. But yeah, so Wilson thought he was being the and by the way, Wilson was very racist privately, actually.
Extremely, extreme.
So
I think he didn't
yeah,
he invite the Klan to the White House? Didn't he do
yes,
that?
supposedly
Yeah.
he did. So this was a man masquerading as the world's policeman, um, pretending to solve a lot of these problems, and he caused many more, arguably.
Yeah, no, I think he deserves to be much more disliked than he is now in the public consciousness. Um, I had a subscriber that said every year at my house we have a I hate Woodrow Wilson party,
I
which
mean, yeah,
I kind of want to know. I don't doubt them, okay, but I kind of want to know what kind of people attend that party. You
and
have to be.
agreed, Anthony. By the way, yes, that it was a failed
No, I agree with this. I
system,
do.
a failed. You know, there's a difference between a a free market globalized versus a centralization globalized, and so Wilson infected the Democrat Party with a lot of these ideas of centralization, and that's, you know, you mentioned Grover Cleveland. That's how Wilson is the direct reason, unfortunately, for why the moderate, sane Democrat had to eventually leave, for the most
Yep.
part. And you know, if history will stay correct, and like your professor told you, if cycles continue, then the Democrats will be it could possibly continue even more. To a party that used to be, you know, Andrew Jackson, and suddenly it's the complete opposite. So it's, we'll see. Time will tell.
No, I certainly agree. So here's what I think about, especially the centralization. So the way Wilson and the progressives, Richard T. Ely, Herbert Crowley, I think Lippmann to a certain extent, Walter Lippmann to a certain extent, the way that kind of old progressive tradition justified centralization was because they believed, and Wilson explicitly says this in his essay on administration, which I think he wrote in the 1880s. They explicitly believed that the political question and the administrative question actually were two separate questions. According to them, the political question had to do with abstract debates. Now, I'm obviously summarizing it significantly because they explained a lot more than just this, but they believe the political question had to deal with abstract debates, debates that were disconnected from the realities of the community. The administrative question was very simple and straightforward. How is government going to work for the people? Now, when I say for the people, I mean, and they meant for the people and the way they view the people, right? Because I recently in a video used the Latin phrase "salus populi suprema lex," and that phrase is sometimes translated as "salus populi suprema lex esto," right? The welfare of the people is the supreme good. That's one of the translations of that phrase. It's a very popular phrase in American legal history. You will actually have, I think Missouri has it in one of the government buildings too. It's actually a very popular phrase, and yet it is also a very unknown phrase to the general public because not many people can speak Latin or care about Latin. I had one class of Latin in high school, and I wish I had stuck it through. Latin's a very scientific and intricate language, but I think
I
it's
took
also a
3 years.
language worth studying.
I think I took
It's a
3
language worth
years,
studying.
and I was very
Yeah,
bad.
yeah, it's a language. It's definitely worth studying.
It's worth
I
studying.
picked up some
Yep.
phrases and words, and I know about some of the declensions. That's about it. Anyway, the reason I use that phrase is because I believe that Latin being a core language, things said in Latin, I think, principles said in Latin are sort of pure form of the words that can then be sorted out, sort of like the foundations of the words that can then be sorted out later. That's why I think a lot of the natural law theorists use Latin too, not just because they were educated men trying to convey ideas to a general public, which they certainly were, many of them were, but because there's something about Latin that makes the conveying of ideas much more pure and rigorous. Anyway, so loose popularity, when the welfare of the people is invoked, it's oftentimes invoked to further an idea called the common good, which is a very complicated idea in political history. It goes all the way back to Aristotle and his emphasis on the community as a role and function of producing virtue, and Aquinas and his role and his emphasis on that as well, going all the way up into the Scholastic era, going all the way up into towards the Enlightenment, where this idea was significantly challenged. But progressives generally believe the common good are things that the average people in society, that is an end, a end goal that the average people in society will benefit from. And they will conceptualize certain people as being against it. So, for example, they will see universal health care as a common good because a lot of people will benefit from it, allegedly. In their view, they will. I'm saying what they believe. I'm not saying what I believe. Generally, the idea of the common good in political history has been taken to mean that there is a sort of general desired state for people in a particular community that will require some action on behalf of those people to abide by. So oftentimes when a conservative talks about the common good, they're probably coming from a Catholic standpoint, and they're going to be talking about how we can act out good character formation, how we can create virtue in our own lives, and how that affects the community. When a progressive talks about the common good, they're oftentimes talking about the goods, or rather the things that a lot of people require to be fulfilled or happy and whole. Well, the problem with both versions of the idea of the common good is that the good is a subjective principle that has been treated as an objective principle for a long time. And that's the problem. When you focus on distribution, which is the progressive vision of the common good, you're ultimately going to have to ignore the fact of inequality. You're going to have to ignore the fact that of scarcity. You're going to have to ignore the fact also that resources do not determine moral right either. So distribution, as I mentioned, suffers from 3 problems. If you go from the conservative standpoint, you're going to have to ignore the fact that character formation itself says very little about us fulfilling our duties, right? I can be the kindest person in the world, the most charitable person in the world, but if I lack a sense of justice in my actions, my good character will mean nothing when it relates to the preservation of the society at whole. At very best, my good character will simply make the society a warmer place to live in. I like warm places to live in, by the way. I like when people are kind to me. But I'd rather someone be just towards me and truthful towards me than someone be merely kind to me. So I think both concepts suffer from their own flaws. I'm not going to go too deep into it because I've already gone down a rabbit hole a little bit. Having said that, the sort of Wilsonian vision was a kind of progressive idea of the common good where distribution and material conditions were the focus of government action. So the progressives said there's the political question and then there's the administrative question. They said the political question is too complicated because it involves all these different ideas and debates about the Constitution. Wilson went as far to say there is a sort of Newtonian view of government that the founders had that says that principles in general matter. And then there is the organic view of government, right? And the organic view of government, according to Wilson, is the right view of government. And the right view of government, according to Wilson, is that which takes into account the development of society. So you treat society as an organism in the broadest sense. So for him, centralization was justified vis-a-vis um, vis-a-vis the question of administration. What do we need to do to make things work? And progressives, by saying that, because by the way, Hakeem Jeffries echoed this point a few weeks ago. He said that
Can I interrupt for a second?
Oh, please, you may. Anytime, please.
Blue Streamer said that he was able to make some space to join in, so we might have
hello. Yes,
Blue
I've
Streamer
been
join.
neglecting the chat a little bit, but yes. Hello, Blue Streamer. How are you doing? Good to see you here, my friend. Yes, thank you so much for making some time to join in. Again, as I said to Anthony and Bud, thank you so much for being here. I know that you have a very busy life. All of you do. So I really appreciate you coming here to listen to two thinkers think courageously and boldly in public. So thank you. I belabored the point quite a lot, but I think I've gotten through the core essence of it. The centralization is justified because it poses itself as a solution towards a problem. But the problem itself is partially due to power. So if power is part of the problem, then we have to really ask ourselves, is more power going to be the solution? Obviously not. So I think that's where progressivism fails miserably, and where a lot of its acolytes fail miserably, and where a lot of its theory fails miserably. But it succeeds in a society ruled by sentiment. And I actually mentioned this in my compassionate immigration video. I asked the question, well, is it compassionate to deport illegal immigrants? Now, many people will say, this doesn't matter because they're here illegally and da-da-da-da-da-da. Okay. Keep going with that. Okay. See where that takes you. That line of reasoning is going to take you towards your own thinking. It's not going to help you challenge your own thinking, or even better, develop a stronger appreciation of your values. It is true. I agree, by the way. I support deportations. I'm not saying I don't. But what I'm saying is, it's not enough to make an argument from process, because us as human beings are not creatures solely of process. We're also creatures of sentiment. The lie that Shapiro sold to people, that facts don't care about your feelings, one of the biggest lies
he reduced it to something stupid.
He did. One of the biggest, which is why when people even mention his name, I get a little nauseated, in all honesty. One of the biggest lies I think that's been told in modern political discourse. Well, while the facts themselves have no particular thoughts about anything, your feelings will most certainly impact how you're able to receive and understand facts. Because man is not a robot. He is a creature of various impulses and factors. And one of those impulses and factors is our rational mind. The other impulse and factors is our heart, is our sentimental mind. So in order for a man to fully be in alignment with the truth, he must bring his sentimental mind in concert with his rational mind and have the two balance it out and not overtake one or the other. If your rational mind overtakes your sentimental mind, your moral framework is going to be impoverished, and you can then justify things like eugenics or some kind of evil stuff. Because you can rationally justify almost anything, but reason is only one part of morality. Reason is the gateway to morality. It is not itself morality. Your sentimental mind puts you in a place where you can no longer objectively assess anything. You will simply allow your heart to guide you solely and fully, which can put you into some equally dangerous places and situations where you're not acting in the best way possible. You can't understand how to be truthful, how to be just, how to have fidelity, how to have veracity, how to have charity, how to have any of these different things without also having a sense of reason. So to treat man as one-dimensional and say you should be solely robotic is to undermine the very thing that makes civilization possible, which is our ability to refine our emotions and our sentiments into sort of powerful tools for real progress. That's what birthed. That's what birthed America as a birth of civilizations in general. So I really reject this notion that's come from the more academic elite, right?
Right.
Facts don't care about it. It's. I want to curse,
It's
man.
a
It's BS, is what it is, and I'm
it
sick
is
of it.
it's a bit of a yes. Yeah. We touched on so many topics. We're approaching 1 hour.
We are, and so I
We
want to
touched
respect
on a
everyone's
lot.
time here.
Wow.
But if you
I
have
don't
anything to
even
say,
know
please say
where
it.
to continue.
Yeah, please, please.
So we're doing some history as well, and frankly, I think somebody maybe mentioned the 70s actually, and
The 70s.
I think somebody mentioned some of the inflation in the 70s, and it's interesting because it's going to become more and more true about the warning of entangling alliances. And I think that's why we have a lot of American firstism resurging. And it doesn't have to be a bad thing
Not at all.
if you frame it within the warning of entangling alliances. That frankly we're just trying to better our nation first, and then security concerns of others will be addressed in a timely manner.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
hmm So
and
here's what I
yeah,
think. I agree with you. I think America firstism, just taken generally, forgetting the historical dimensions, it's been a thing since the 1920s, and it's meant different things throughout different periods of American history. But American firstism, taken properly and generally, I think simply means that the statesman who serves the people, salus populi supreme lex, the statesman ought to take into account, before anything else, the duty that he has towards his own people. And that duty is not only binding, it is also informative. It informs his conduct at home and abroad. And where his duty to the people is displaced by a fascination with foreign lands and foreign peoples, he can no longer be trusted to execute and carry out what he was empowered to do by the people, and therefore he has become deviant to his role, and he's become an enemy in essence of truth, of justice. That is what America First means to me. When it comes to actual policy, that's going to mean a very reserved posture to a lot of things that happen in the world. It's going to mean using diplomatic capital more than using military force. That's going to mean disincentivizing the starting of wars. That's going to mean a lot of different things. Most importantly, it's going to mean that we have to have a supreme focus on our homeland, not to the exclusion of everything else, right? Some folks think that just means you want to be a hermit and just go inside your shell. No, I didn't say that. In fact, that posture is impossible, because we live in a world that even if we were to say no more foreign engagements, we're still doing commerce with hundreds of countries around the world. We still have embassies across the world that are there to serve purely just diplomatic purposes. We're still doing a lot of different things that really don't involve guns and bombs, at least not directly, and indirectly they very well may. So it doesn't mean become a hermit, but it does mean recognize that just like a person is limited in his affections and duties towards others, the nation, simply being a collection of people, is equally and proportionally limited in its affection and duties towards its own people. And the moment that is extended beyond its proper bounds is the moment you get trouble, the moment you get the dereliction of moral duty, and the moment you get injustice. So America First to me is simply a logical consequence of understanding both the anatomy of the nation, the anatomy of moral duty, and how the statesman ought to be rendered accountable to the people. So I think that it's healthy. I think that fortunately that some folks have hijacked the term to have a sort of what's the word for it? The term isn't always used purely. It's sometimes used not even to refer to the military or military engagements. It's sometimes used to refer to demographics. Let's put it that way. And that's when I think things get stupid real fast and things get twisted real fast. Because it's one thing to talk about the duties a statesman has to the people and the nature of nationhood being a limited thing that flows from the limitations of human nature. It's another to talk about the sort of identity or changing demographics of a country that is related particularly to appearance and not related to particularly values. I think America First is oftentimes used to talk about that. And I don't mean mass immigration. I just literally mean demographics changing. That's when I think things become a little bit untenable. Because the focus is wrong. There's a time and a place to speak about demographics. But in no universe should that be the primary or the main focus of any articulation of duty towards people. All right? In no way. And when it becomes the main focus and the main obsession, that's when it becomes an impediment to understanding what the concept actually means. So, yeah.
I want to mention Bobby was encouraging us to be a little careful with some of the commentators. And I wanted to mention that in the event that we have some racist trolls in the comments, I hope you enjoy wasting your evening. Because clearly you've been here for a while.
I don't think they watch me. I don't think a lot of people who genuinely are like that watch me.
Just a
I could be
shout out
wrong,
to Bud.
but I doubt it.
Comment
I don't think they
about
watch.
cockroaches in Georgia, whatever that means. I'm not exactly sure what's going on, but if we have any trolls in the comments, I hope you enjoy your evening.
Anyway, moving right along. So
Right.
we've covered quite a lot of ground, haven't we? So to kind of tie it all together, I'm very happy the show's coming back. In fact, we can even talk about some of the greatest moments of this show, so to speak. So I think we've only had ever 5 episodes, 6 now, I think. And back when the show started, we used to do call-ins. And those call-ins were very interesting. I met a lot of interesting people I didn't even know watched the channel. We also used to. There are some moments that I think things went off the rails, right? And then there were some moments where I think things didn't go far enough. But I think in any case, the goal of our project remained the same. So I want to ask you, Nikoji, going forward, how do you see Moral Panic's role in the discourse? How do you see it shaping
Well, I
up?
think we encourage people to engage in civics, and I think we encourage people to engage in philosophy. And if it means that we come to disagreements, that's okay, because that's part of the process. So I think this is a project of discourse, and hopefully, there's that phrase "common ground," and I think we've been seeing technology producing uncommon ground. And our project here is to invert the systems that have diverted us for too long.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of inverting, I think it's going to be interesting for us to do interviews. For us to, we obviously talk more later about this, but interviews, we can host debates. There's a lot of things we can do with this show. It can be a gateway to all kind of possibility, I think. I'm really excited. I think what we're building right now is special. I think this channel is special. I think your content that you're beginning to make is special. And I think the simple act of thinking courageously in public. Many of you don't realize how important it is to think courageously in public. How profound it is to think courageously in public. The presence of others is what allows the mind and also what allows our values to be refined. Because the presence of others gives us both sounding board and also gives us corrective. A mind without corrective or limits is a runaway mind. A mind with corrective or limits is the well-ordered mind. We are in the process right now. You may not realize it, but me and Nikoji are in the process right now of helping create well-ordered minds. Your mind is the most precious thing you have. Your body is important, but there are people that can live with crippled bodies, in wheelchairs, in crutches, no matter what, no legs, and yet the essence of who they are is still contained in their mind. If your mind is damaged, you can no longer truly be who you are. You can't express that. Your mind is the most important asset within your whole anatomy, which is why it's also the gateway towards moral truth as well. That's why reason resides in the mind as well. So it's you should treat your mind as you treat your food or your water. Many of you would not eat food that had dirt and bugs smeared all over it. Many of you would not drink water that was completely and totally dark brown. Many of you would not walk into the middle of a fire and take a big gust of air up your lungs because you might die of heat exhaustion by the time you get to your second breath. Many of you wouldn't do that. Many of you know, and many of you know just intuitively that those things are bad. And yet, so many people, maybe none of you, but so many people are willing to ingest intellectual poison into their mind, to degrade their mind, degrade their thinking, and get hooked on something temporary and something that is ultimately detrimental to long-term thinking. So many people. A culture of the mind is going to fundamentally involve creating a filtration system where just as you make sure there's no filth on your food, just as you make sure your water has no dirt in it, you also make sure filth is not able to affect your mind as much as it can without that filtration system. That's how we restore a culture of the heart, where sentiments and reason cohere and sync. That's how we restore a sense of civic virtue, where people do the right thing, not because it makes them a good person, but because it makes them more fulfilled in their duties. That's how we restore a culture where nihilism and cynicism don't have the room they have right now to take hold in the minds of the impressionable. That's how we restore a culture where thinking boldly and courageously does not simply seem like the domain of the academics or the elites or the potential, but it actually is the domain of the common man. That is how we restore an existence of a virtuous citizenry that our founders were so dutifully inspired by and wished to create. It all begins by building a culture of the mind. So when I say, and my rant is over, so 1 second. When I say what we are doing here is special, I think it's special. And I'm so damn excited to see where we go. And I want to thank Nikoji, who's been my friend for many years. I want to thank him for finally pushing me to live stream. Because many of you actually may know, if you've watched the show in the past, or maybe if you haven't watched the show, I struggle from significant amounts of self-doubt. And I have a very powerful inner critic that's right up here that messes with me all the time. I win sometimes, but sometimes I don't win. And when I don't win, the result tends to be non-production. The result tends to be, oh, just don't make any content. The result tends to be, just a lot of negative stuff. And me actually thinking and talking in this format is helping me a lot, because me actually thinking and talking in this format is allowing me to see just how impactful this kind of work can still be for me. So I'm very thankful. I'm very glad to be here. And I do hope a lot of you still show up, because the numbers we've gotten tonight are actually quite inspiring. I didn't even know. I've been taking massive gaps in content. I've been taking 13 days, 14 days, month, whatever. I've been taking a lot, just massive gaps in content. And I didn't know if people would still want to actually hear me talk. And I'm actually so grateful that you all do. So I'm very happy that we're doing
Thank
this.
you. All right. Well, with that being said, I think we can all stay pensive.
I hope so. I will certainly hope so. And I hope that my example, and by the way, because we're going to close in a second here, but before we do, I want to kind of say something. I hope that the example of both Nikoji and me, if any of you are dealing with any sort of inner doubt or have dreams that are currently bigger than where you're at right now in life, I hope that seeing this display regularly is going to help you be inspired to chase your own version of meaning. Even if those dreams are modest, even if I know I have some people that have kids to watch me, even if your dream is simply to see the best for your kids, make sure they're doing good. I want that for you. Even if maybe you don't have kids, maybe you're a young guy in college and you want to have a flourishing career in the academy, or you want to be able to make some kind of invention or discovery that changes. I want the best for you. No matter how small or big the dream feels, the DNA is the same. The DNA of the dream and the pathway to get there is largely similar. Well, the pathway may be different, but the DNA is largely similar. And I want all of you to lean into that and chase that. I want all of you to have good lives. I want all of you to have fulfilled lives. I want all of you to be able to get the most out of our time on this planet. The content I make right now is so drastically different from the content I made 3 years ago. Not because there's more philosophy. There was philosophy back then, but the philosophy was subordinate to my desire and drive to game the algorithm. I was more worried about getting views, and I was scared that leaning too much into depth would be a bad thing. But now I realize that maybe, just maybe, it's not good to keep up with a culture that is failing. It's better and more important to build a culture that is healthier and that is going to lead to more people succeeding. Now that I realize that, I'm going to do that. I'm going to keep doing that. So this show here, the sort of a culmination of this show, is going to coincide with several other items. Starting Monday, which is tomorrow, I've got some work to do. Unfortunately, I have a full-time job. I wish this was my full-time job. The goal is for this to become my full-time job eventually. But I've got some more stuff that I have to do tonight. But tomorrow, I want all of you to hold me accountable. Everyone listening to me. tomorrow it begins. Tomorrow I'm going to begin. I've got some content pre-recorded. I'm going to begin posting stuff that I've recorded over the past few days. I'm going to begin posting consistently. And by this time next week, or whenever we're able to meet again for this particular meeting, this particular live stream, I think the state of our community is going to look very different, numbers wise, everything. I'm not sure what it will be. It'll look different. But most importantly, I want all of you to be energized in what we're trying to do here. So I'm excited. I hope many of you are excited. I think we have some pretty good things coming. Nikoji, do you have anything you want to say before we?
No, I think you summed it up. I think it was a good live stream, despite the appearance of strange figures. And we had
there was only one. There was only one or two, not many.
Right, right. We had a good chat. Anthony, Blue Streamer, all the rest. Thank you to Bob as well.
Yep.
And trolls be warned.
Well, look, we don't worry about the trolls. Help us get more attention. So,
yep.
But no, I think everyone. Thank you guys so much for being here. Whether it be Bud, whether it be Bobby, whether it be Blue Streamer Anthony, whether it be others I have not mentioned. Thank you so much for being here. I really, Alexa, thank you for being here. All of you, thank you so much for being here. Bob, thank you for being here. I'm so grateful. I'm so happy and so thankful. So, we'll do this again next week, most likely. I'll get back to you guys with an actual date. But until next time, my friends, you know what to do. Nikoji, I'll let you go. Close this out. You know what to say.
Stay pensive.
If you want to close this out, you can, or I'll do.
Oh, sorry. Oh, the actual button.
No, like you know what to say.
Stay pensive.
Boom. There we go. Stay pensive, everyone. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Bye all. Thanks. Bye.